to our series, Women in Television, Shaping the Image. We are extremely fortunate to have a series of notable speakers to focus on the images of women in television, past, present, and what they may and can be in the future. Additionally, and very importantly, this series examines the place of women in the television industry as creators and as business persons. The images of women on television both reflect today's images of women in our society and shape tomorrow's images of women in our society. Because we human beings tend to behave in ways our culture cues us to behave, the power of women's images in television on the behavior of women and men today and in the future is extraordinary. Thus, what we are about in our critical examination of the roles of women on and off screen is extremely important and significant for all of our futures. In a university which has historically focused on women through a women's college, Westhampton College, it is particularly appropriate that members of this university community have chosen to study and to lead us in stimulating critical thought and expanding the knowledge base about women in television. In closing, on behalf of the university community, I wish to express appreciation to our guests who are leading us in each session, and to our own Dr. Robert S. Alley and Dr. Irby B. Brown for their leadership in creating this experience. Again, welcome to everyone, and enjoy the evening. Thank you.
It's my pleasure to introduce to you Laura Oaksmith, who is the head of our Virginia Film Commission. In that role, which she holds very ably, she is the chief person in our Commonwealth responsible for luring, enticing, driving people to this state from Los Angeles, New York, or wherever we can get them, to make some of those excellent films that are made here. We remember, for example, Dancing, that was made here at Mountain Lake, which was then retitled Dirty Dancing after we got that home. And Laura has been extremely successful in bringing tens of millions of dollars into this state. That on the one hand, and on the other hand, in making it possible for feature filmmakers and makers of movies of the week to make some of their best efforts here. So she's a wonderful liaison person. We're proud of her and delighted to have her here as moderator this evening. Laura Oaksmith.
I'd like to begin by introducing our panelists this evening, beginning on my far left with Sally Steenland, who for 8 years served as the media director for the National Commission on Working Women and is currently serving as a consultant with this nonprofit National Women's Employment Organization. To Sally's right, we have Marcia Mitchell, who at the moment is chairperson, she's chairman, written here, but I'll change that, chairperson of Montserrat Productions, which is a new film production company formed last year. Marcia was also involved with the American Film Institute as the associate director, and during her tenure there was responsible for 3 programs based in Los Angeles: the Directing Workshop for Women, the Independent Filmmaker Program, and the Academy Intern Program, all of which addressed concerns of women working in the art of the moving image. Prior to her work with the AFI, she was Director of Human Resources Development for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and Marcia is also an author. Her most recent book, although it was 1980, was Management Strategies for Women. And our third guest is Russ Woody, who, since his arrival in Los Angeles in 1980, has written for a number of MTM projects, programs such as Hill Street Blues, St. Elsewhere. He more recently, currently is serving as writer-producer for Murphy Brown, Worked as writer-producer for Parenthood, writer-producer for Good Sports. And to my immediate left, we have, keep all these notes straight, Deborah Smith, who in 1976 moved to Los Angeles, began working for Larimar Productions, initially in the Business Affairs department. She moved on from Business Affairs to becoming a production coordinator with Larimar, working on many pilots, series, movies of the week, miniseries, and features such as Carney, S.O.B., The Last Starfighter, Lace, and Blood and Orchids. In 1983, Deborah began working on My Sister Sam for Warner Brothers as associate producer for Diane English. 2 years later, she became the coordinating producer on Murphy Brown. Currently, she is still on Murphy Brown, serving as co-producer. And I just want to point out that Murphy Brown, in its first season, received 11 Emmy nominations and 4 Emmy wins. Next, we'd like to start by asking each guest to make a short presentation, and that will be followed by an exchange of ideas generated by the panelists' opening remarks. And if I could ask everyone to hold their questions until we've had an opportunity to hear from all of our guests. And should we start with Sally?
What? Okay. I'll be short. I'm going to talk a little bit about the good news and the bad news for women both in front of the camera and behind the camera. And I guess I have to say good news compared to what? Sometimes when we talk about progress, we think of progress sometimes as a straight line. We say, well, the 80s were better than the 70s, and the 70s were better than the 60s, and the 90s will be better than the 80s. And that, in fact, is not necessarily true. Progress is not a straight line. It's a pretty crooked line. And I think many in the industry would say that, in fact, the 80s were not better than the 70s, and we do not yet know how the 90s will be. We hope they will be better. I just did a big report that looked at the image of women and the employment of women on all of primetime entertainment shows. All the shows that were on the air a year ago this time, which is about 80 shows altogether. Researchers and myself watched them, if you can imagine that. And we pretended we were the Census Bureau, actually, and we counted all the women and men who were regular characters on these shows. Their ages, their jobs, their race, their ethnicity, if they were married or not, and we got a little Census Bureau picture of who these characters were. And then we went behind the camera and we looked at the number of women who were writers, producers, and directors on all the shows. So the things that I say in terms of good news and bad news will primarily be based on what we found in that study. Good news. The good news in front of the camera, as many of you know, is that there are more shows with strong female leads than ever before, and you can probably name them. It's Murphy Brown, it's Designing Women, it's Golden Girls, it's Roseanne, China Beach was a show that I'm not sure it's on right now, but was a drama with a strong female character. And these are shows with breakthrough women. They're self-reliant. These women do not need to be rescued. They're terrific characters, and that is very, very good news. Now, the bad news is that these shows are the exception, not the rule. When I did a lot of press around my report, I would get this comment over and over again. What do you have to complain about? There's so many women on TV. Look at, and then they would name the shows I just mentioned to you. Well, you can name those shows and still have a lot of fingers left over on your hands. Those shows add up to what, less than 10? And if there's 80 shows on the air, what you want to say is, well, what about the other 70? Where are the female leads on those shows? So the bad news is that there are not enough shows with women characters on them, especially dramas. The shows with women on them tend to be sitcoms. I don't know if it's a taboo or what, but other than Rosie O'Neill and Cagney and Lacey, there do not seem to be many shows with female leads. There are shows with women in strong roles in ensemble casts, like L.A. Law and 30-something, but with a woman on her own doesn't seem to happen, so that's bad news. Good news in terms of age is that women are older on TV than they've been in the past. 10 years ago, most women on TV were in their 20s. Now, most of us are in our 30s, so we're inching up. And that's good. And even a few of us, like Murphy Brown, are in our 40s. The bad news is that there's still a double standard. Men on TV get to be older than women. Men on TV get to be in their 50s. They're in their prime. They're thriving in their 50s. That's not the case for women. And so there still is that double standard regarding aging. Good news in front of the camera is there are more black women on television than in the past, many of them in leading roles. The visibility is greater than ever before. The bad news is, once again, there's a relegation to sitcoms. It's hard to find black women on dramas, and Hispanic and Asian women are nearly impossible to find. Their visibility, in fact, has not really increased at all. So that's not evenly spread out. Another piece of good news in front of the camera is that there's more economic diversity than there's been in the past. The 80s on TV were a season of greed, where everybody was rich, everybody had perfect lives, and that's not the case anymore. We've got Married with Children, we've got Roseanne, we've got The Simpsons, we've got women who've got money troubles, the family budget doesn't stretch, and inasmuch as this is authentic, this is good. There's one bad news thing in front of the camera that I just want to mention, and I think it is pretty bad. And it's the treatment of adolescent girls on television. I think adolescent girls are treated in a more stereotypical, worse way than adult women. And there are exceptions. There's Darlene on Roseanne, there's the Cosby Girls, there's A Different World, there's Lisa Simpson, who is a wonderful girl. But on the whole, adolescent girls on TV care about two things. They care about shopping and they care about dating. And that's about all they do. Now, girls in real life care about this, but they care about a lot of other things too. And on TV, it's those other things that get lopped off that make for very narrow characters. And when you look at shows like The Wonder Years, you look at shows like Doogie Howser that have male leads, you say, where are the shows with girls? And they're like that, and they are simply not on the air. A rather chilling thing happened to me about a year ago. I was out in LA doing a lot of interviews for this report, and I was talking to a producer-writer for a popular show, and I asked the producer this question: why are there no girls on TV? And the producer looked at me, producer-writer looked at me and said, well, girls aren't as interesting as boys are. There's nothing to write about a girl. I mean, when a girl grows up, two things happen. She wants to be pretty and she wants boys to like her. That's all that goes on in a girl's life. But boys have so much material. There's so much to write about in terms of boys. Boys have the rituals of manhood, sports, violence, the father-son conflict, preparation for the world of work. They have sexuality. There's so much to write about when it comes to boys. And this person said this to me with a straight face, and I thought, well, no wonder. If that's what people think in terms of girls and in terms of boys, no wonder boys get more attention and capture the imagination on television more than the girls. And the punchline of the story is that the writer-producer who said this to me was a woman. It was not a man. And she was speaking of her own when she said that, so that was really quite chilling. Good news and bad news in front of the camera. The good news is that there are more powerful women than ever before, making deals, having successful shows with a lot of clout, and it's Diane English, it's Marcy Carsey, it's Linda Bloodworth Thomason, it's really successful, ambitious, talented women. And the bad news, again, is that there are not enough of them. When we looked at the numbers on these 80 shows for the entire season, September through April, the percentage of women producers on all of these shows was 15%, which is far too small. Percentage of women writers was 25%, which is too small, although I would imagine writers have made more progress. The percentage of women directors was 9%, which is embarrassingly small. It's just really, really tiny. Some things I would like us to talk about this weekend in terms of making it better, and we can talk as the sessions go on as to whether people think it is going to be better or worse than the 90s, and there's no uniformity of opinion as far as I can tell. Some people think it's going to be great, some people think it's going to get worse. But in order to make it better, some things have to happen. One thing is that the industry-wide, has got to figure out what to do about child care. Because as it is now, if women want to get top jobs, and we do want women at the top, if you have children, it's virtually impossible to do that, both because the perception of you changes and the reality of your life changes. And so something is literally, drastically, has to happen about that. Institutions have, or companies have to become a lot more flexible in terms of work and family. We as women have to prepare ourselves very thoroughly to get those jobs, and what that means is we have to know not only the creative end of the business, but we have to prepare ourselves in terms of the financial end, the legal end, learn all of that stuff, and we have to work really, really hard because it's an industry with a very, very high failure rate for both men and women. The good news is that if you're talented, if you're hardworking, if you're ambitious, it's not a level playing field for women, but I do believe that those qualities are recognized and I believe they're rewarded.
Shall we go home?
Yeah.
Were you wonderful?
That was everything I was going to say.
I was going to talk about, but you were absolutely wonderful. You were wonderful.
It's my job. It's what I do.
A focus that I would like to bring to this discussion tonight deals with how women get to where they are in the industry. My experience has been primarily in public broadcasting. I think public broadcasting is a wonderful training ground for either staying in public broadcasting, doing something wonderful there, or moving into the commercial arena. In public broadcasting, there have been a number of great training programs that have addressed this basic question: how do you try to make that playing field a little more level? How do you identify the problems? How do you solve those problems? How do you move along? How do you get into the business of learning how to make the right kinds of decisions? How do you know that you can succeed or how in this business, and how do you know what you need to do? How do you know what you need to learn? I was dismayed to learn just this week that a major training program in public broadcasting, the Women's Training Grant Program, is now out of business. This concerns me enormously because it has been an extremely successful program. It was open to women who were already in the broadcast community but who wanted to move to higher levels, wanted to move into decision-making roles. People who had enough experience in broadcasting to know that they wanted to move ahead, they wanted to do some new and exciting things, and if they happened to be a floor manager at the very, very lowest level in broadcasting, they at least had a sample that they wanted to do something about it. They were excited about moving ahead, but they had no way of doing it. Many of them had children, had financial obligations, they couldn't quit and go back to school. Well, we put together a training program that paid their salary for a year, paid a broadcast station or a broadcast entity for a year, paid child care for a year, paid transportation costs. And it was really thrilling to work with that particular group of women. We put together a panel of people from both commercial and public broadcasting who reviewed applications. And I remember one session in particular where we had a dozen applicants who were over 40 years old who said, I still want to try. I want to do something different. I really want to make something of myself in broadcasting. We also had people coming from the commercial side. There was some risk involved. I mean, there were people who said to us in their applications, I don't know if I can do this. I'm scared. I'm really frightened about taking this step, but I want to do something more than what I'm doing. We made the decisions, we funded those women, and I remember sitting with a woman who was an associate producer on Carl Sagan's Cosmos, and sitting in the control booth with her while she was calling up the special effects and working with her on in such an exciting way. And this was a woman who had not even worked on the technical side in broadcasting, but who had been in an office. And she was in her 40s, and she came to our panel and said, look, I think I can do this. She has since done very well. that kind of opportunity, I believe, has to exist for women who want to move up in broadcasting, who are not very young. And I think there is a whole constituency there whose needs and interests have to be addressed, because these are talented women who have something to offer. In terms of students, there are some wonderful intern programs where young women can actually move onto a production team as an intern. The Academy Internship Program, Corporation for Public Broadcasting has had internship programs. These are mechanisms that allow a woman to get in and try and take the risk. And we mentioned last night that one has to learn that it's all right to fail. Sometimes a woman gets into a position like that and says, this is not really what I want to do. You know, I don't really want to be here. I thought I wanted to be here. You can do that at relatively low cost through that kind of experience, a training experience. It doesn't always work. We also had some minority training grant programs that were very successful. But again, looking at good news, bad news, for every success story, there's probably maybe a half of a failure story. Someone who couldn't make it and couldn't survive. But I'm deeply concerned about dealing with those issues of how people get to where they want to be. The idea of having a mentor is important. And for people like these people here who are successful, who are willing to take people under their professional wings, that's extremely important. We can't forget that there are so many people who need our help. Networking is a critical issue. It's a critical issue. And for those of us who have been involved in the industry on either side, either public broadcasting, commercial broadcasting, either on the art side of the issue or the commerce side. We tend to forget that the art of the moving image has two sides, art and commerce. Laura, in her role, is kind of at the crossroads, where she deals with the art form, with moving image as an art form. She deals with the commerce side, and that's bringing people in to create that art form in the state. There are so many roles, and there are so many people on all sides of this fascinating industry, and I think we have to help. I feel passionately about it. I feel passionately about how women are perceived in the industry. I feel passionately about how the programs women create are conceived and are treated, are conceived, and what happens to them. And I think that having women in decision-making roles, in roles where they're looking at scripts and saying, this works from a different perspective. I remember spending some time on Indian reservations with teenagers. Let me tell you, the suicide rate was the highest in the nation on those reservations. And a lot of those young people would go out in a car at night in the winter and allow themselves to freeze to death. And I interviewed children who were very disturbed, who said, but we don't live like the rest of this country. And of course they weren't. But they wanted to live like the Cosby family. They wanted to live like the perfect television family. And they felt that difference so keenly. Some of them were having difficulty surviving. Maybe it's foolish on my part to think that more women involved in making decisions about programming. Maybe women are more sensitive. I hope they are. And I think we're seeing some changes in that regard. So I hope we can talk about some of these things.
Well, I used to be a woman. I suppose I'm sort of here to answer some questions from a writer's perspective about writing and portraying women. I think, in fairness to the industry, I've worked in both situations, which were boys' clubs, writing situations, and integrated, if you will. I think there's like any business, a lot of Hollywood is run by the good old boy network, and it's very difficult. It's very difficult for anyone to get into the business in the first place. For the one success that you're talking about, there are 20 failures in LA. I think things are slowly changing regarding women's positions in running shows. I think it's happening slowly. And I guess I'd also like to say that from the people that I've worked with and I've been around, most, I would say, are very conscious of the problem and the situation. A lot don't do anything about it. A lot are not conscious about it. And I'm not talking about just men and their perspective. I'm talking also about women and their perspective. I just finished reading some scripts, and a couple of the worst ones that I read, worst in terms of sexism and portrayal of women in roles, were written by women. I think in some ways it is changing. It's slowly changing. But I guess I'm here to say, too, there's a lot of people involved in the industry who are very aware of it and who are working towards making those changes. Is that long enough?
I guess the only thing that I have to offer is just giving you my perspective on a working woman over the last 15 years in the television industry. One of the things I think that might be somewhat unique is that for the last 15 years I've worked for more powerful women than men. So I've had a lot of role models, and I thought about this on the plane coming in, and it was pretty exciting, and I thought, oh, well, I've worked for this woman and this woman and this one in business affairs. It was run by 2 women. That was my first job, secretary. And then going through various shows, lots of women writers and executive producers, and I guess I've been very lucky because the men I've met along the way, interwoven with the women, have been really terrific. So I can give maybe a little bit more positive perspective on it for you. Russ is right, it's hard to get into the business, and working is something that is a unique experience for everybody. There's so many different ways of getting in it, there's so many different ways of staying in it, and there's so many, maybe there's 1 or 2 ways of getting out of it. I don't know. I haven't discovered those yet. But that's probably what I can offer you here is just my own personal perspective. And that's it.
Thank you. I'm going to start off with a question, and anyone can jump in and answer. I think we have a consensus that some progress has been made with regard to multi-dimensional portrayal of women in television. Have there, and again I'm getting back to the topic for this evening, which is gender issues and television, not necessarily women in television. Have there been similar gains with regard to a multifaceted portrayal of men on television? Men in non-traditional roles, as well as a portrayal of men with, with emotional lives. We talk about the daycare issues that Sally brought up. Well, I think a lot of this involves the role of men in our society. Why is it that women are delegated with the primary caretaker role? And I think that the terms of the debate should not just be the role of women. I think it's much broader than that. And that's a broad question, but if anyone cares to.
Well, one new thing on TV, as we all know, are dads who take care of kids. Nurturing dads are really hot these days, as you probably know. And the moms mysteriously disappear. The moms are all dead. I think it's really funny. It's not funny that they're dead, but it's like we live in third world countries or something. I mean, what happens to these women? They're like 30 years old and they're dead. And it's a respectable way because, if they were divorced, then the dads would be bad guys and they have to be good guys. And so they're...
Dads wouldn't have the kids.
They were divorced?
Sometimes.
If it was a bad mom, if it was like a Kramer versus Kramer, she just wanted to go do her thing. Yeah, then she'd dump the kids with dad. But what's interesting in a lot of these shows is the kids are sort of accessories, They sort of are, they're a nice, they make the dads nurturing, but the dads still live incredibly full, rich, non-exhausting lives, and they have girlfriends, and they have jobs, and all these wonderful things happen to them, plus they get points because they have kids. So it's a mixed thing. I mean, it's wonderful to see nurturing men relating to children and full-time dads and all of that, but the sort of fantasy level of it is high, and they also, as in the real world, get points that women don't. You know, it's the old story of the woman on the airplane who's got the kid, and they say, why doesn't she make that kid shut up? And the dad who has the kid, and they say, look at that man, do you need some help with that baby? And it's the same on TV.
Sally, I was also intrigued with when you talked about the sitcom arena as opposed to the dramatic program. You know, the show Who's the Boss, which is clearly an example of a man in a non-traditional role. Does the sitcom arena impact on the effectiveness of the unique portrayal of you know, men or women? I mean, why was the distinction drawn between the progress we've made, but it's only in the sitcom arena?
Well, these guys can talk to that. I think it's just the genre that sitcoms are family genres, and hour-long tend to be action shows. And the feeling, the conventional wisdom is that men can carry action shows. And we've got, you know, Matlock and Wise Guy and Midnight Caller and all of that. And that's a genre with a long tradition that goes back a long way. Cowboys, detectives, and all of that. And women don't seem to be able to fit into that action genre, the conventional wisdom is. And there's another thing that goes along with that that I found when I was doing my study. It was very interesting that on a lot of these action shows that have the male leads, the women, Hunter is another one, the women on the shows are the sidekicks, and they are great characters, but there's one thing they can never do. They can never overshadow. They can never usurp the male initiative. They can help, they can assist, they can aid, but they never become the leader. And a perfect example was this one Matlock show I was watching for this report, where there was a female character on it. She was just on for that week, but she was portrayed as very feisty, and she was very athletic, and she was a real can-do, tomboy kind of person, and she was witness to a murder. And Matlock, who's, what, 60-something, was interviewing her in a room, and she spotted an intruder. And given the way her character was presented in the first half hour of that show, she should have said, oh my God, there's an intruder, and she should have chased him and caught him. No, she said, oh! And Matlock, with his overweight 65-year-old self, you know, went after the intruder while she sort of stayed in the room and waited for him to catch the guy. And it's those kinds of very subliminal things. And another thing I heard was that on certain shows, you guys might know this too, there are unspoken rules about just height requirements, that the female characters can never literally overshadow, be taller than. They always have to, you know, be shorter than too, for all that subliminal stuff.
Oh, I've not heard of that.
Oh.
But that might be because of the actor and his personal problem.
It's in his contract.
It might be in his
Right.
contract.
Robert Redford is short.
I think a big part of that problem is women writers have to start being more aggressive in what they're going to write and about, and have women as lead characters, women detectives, maybe women FBI agents, women lawyers, as opposed to a group and a one-woman lawyer. And it takes a fight, because you have to get past not only a production company, but you have to get to the network, which these are boys' networks. And it takes a lot of strength and a lot of determination to get a Murphy Brown, who is the lead character, a very strong character, and that's someone like a Diane English, who knows exactly what she's doing and doesn't give up right into the last step in the door of the president of CBS. And walks in and says, you know, this is what we're doing. And he says, oh, okay. Because she's so sure and so determined that this is exactly what America will watch if it's presented to them. And of course, you know, history has shown that she's right. There aren't that many women like that right now. I don't know why. I can't answer that question. A lot of, I think, women get frightened away because of negative feedback, and they tend to shy away. And you've got to, maybe just as a piece of advice, if you're going into the business, you kind of got to put blinders on and not see it and somewhat ignore it and just keep plowing through. And by example of a Diane English, a Linda Bloodworth Thomason, it can be done. It's hard. It takes a lot of work and a lot of door slamming in your face, but eventually it can be done, and America will accept it.
I think an interesting example is Angela Lansbury. I mean,
Yes,
here we
she's a
have
great
not
example.
only a female, but an older female, and the sheriff is always the dumb schmuck. I mean, he's always the one who's messing up, and she's so gracious about it. And she pats his hand, and he's lovely, and she explains to him the error of his ways. And that's kind of wonderful. But Deborah, I wonder about these women who then get, write a tough character, write a strong character. Talking about Diane English going in and fighting for it. Isn't that just awfully hard to get that script treated, get it really read and thoughtfully read and get some interest in it?
Well, it's hard. And Russ is a writer, so I'm not a writer, and he knows how difficult it really is to get past
You
any
crawl
kind
in
of
on all
script.
fours and
But
Into Diane's office? Me? I'm afraid of her. No. Well, a couple things on what you said about, I think with the Matlock, which I don't really watch, but having this guy chase the bad guy when someone else should have, that's a symptom of the fact that so many of the dramas the leads are men. In any show that you do like that, I assume that whoever does the action stuff, whoever has to do the bad guy solving the thing is the star, be it a male or female. So, I mean, those sorts of things are, yes, they're subliminal when you see them, but it's a symptom of a larger problem, of just casting those roles in the beginning. I don't know. It's interesting the thing about sitcoms too. I'm considering 3 shows that will be new next season, and the first is Linda Lavin, who is she's a mother, and her daughter runs a television station. Yeah. The other is 3. Heidi Perlman is doing it, who used to write Tracy Ullman and Cheers. About 3 sisters living together, or 2 living together, and a 3rd coming into it. The other is the other one that I'm considering also. Of the 3 that I'm considering is James Garner would star. So, and his role comes from his ex-wife is a city councilwoman who drops dead.
Aha.
And no, he hates kids. But yeah, I never thought about the difference between drama and comedy.
I mean, TV's only a reflection of society. Would we want to see? I mean, the conventional wisdom, I think, always is broken. You'd never. Who would want to watch a sitcom about 4 women past menopause? They said, well, Golden Girls is a big hit. Who would want to see a show with black characters and no white characters? Well, Cosby Show's a big hit. I mean, who would want to watch a show with people with money problems who complain all the time? Well, Roseanne's a big hit. So I think conventional wisdom often gets broken, but if there were an action show with this really sort of tough female cop, I don't know. She blew people away.
Yeah.
Well, there was a show called Blue Steel. It didn't last very long. Do you remember the woman? She had a gun like this, and she blew up vans, and she was so incredibly tough. There was something very unsettling about it. Actually, there was. It was very unsettling.
In what you were studying, though, how much do you credit the audience with making those decisions? Because
The decisions of.
like you were saying, with Matlock, if the woman had actually chased the bad guy and dragged him down, I mean, would it be fair to say that part of the audience doesn't want to see that comes from what the audience wants to see? They want to see men, and there are women viewers perhaps who would rather see a Tom Selleck do a 100-yard dash after someone and drag him down instead of Farrah
It's
Fawcett?
tricky.
It's
Very
would.
tricky. I mean, an example is the really popular movies of the week these days, as you probably know, are the Women in Jeopardy movies, where women, you know, somebody kidnaps her kid, somebody, and she's in jeopardy, and or she's being stalked or whatever. And these movies are incredibly popular, and they're popular with women as well as men. And in December, I was out in LA talking to a bunch of people, and I was talking to the head of CBS, and they were about ready to do I think they were doing My Child Was Stolen female Jeopardy movie, and they were doing the teaser for it. And the first teaser, you know, the promo that was going to show before the show aired, and the first one that they did a rough cut, and this guy looked at it, showed the woman freaked, panicked, oh my God, what am I going to do? And he said, you know, that's not really the message we want to convey. We want to convey woman in charge, woman solves problem. I will not stop, you know, I will not stop at anything to get my child back. So they picked some other clips, and the promo they showed was, you know, the Avenger, this woman who was going to stop at nothing to get her child back, and that's the promo they want. And the show, in fact, did quite well. But you're exactly right. I mean, the women being stalked in Women Jeopardy movies are on the air because they're very popular and they get good numbers with all viewers, women and men.
Well, now, viewing audience, this may be a cliche, though. Women control the audiences, right, for primetime television? Is that right?
What some research has shown is it differs a lot geographically, socioeconomically, and what some research shows is that although there are more women in the audience, the men control the dial, the clicker. And she'll, for peace in the family, she'll say, I'll watch that. Or she's in the kitchen doing the dishes anyway, or whatever. And that, from family to family, in terms of who makes the decision of what show to watch, it's hard to say, actually, unless you go into that home and ask.
There were some interesting experiments with target audience programming a few years ago. Very special programs made that supposedly were going to reflect women better, avoid stereotypical treatment of women, deal with issues that women were concerned about. Same thing for minorities. So all this money was spent. This was in the public broadcasting unit. All this money was spent on target audience programming. And then they did the research. Nobody watched it. The women didn't want to watch it. The minorities didn't. They didn't want to watch programs that were supposedly geared to them and that addressed all of these issues. They were watching The Cosby Show, or they were watching, you know, Cagney and Lacey. They were watching all these other things on the commercial networks. And target audience programming was not successful. I mean, it was just, and a lot of money was put into that. All of these, you know, panels and discussions, and what do we need to give? How do we need to treat women in this? What are the issues they care about? We've got to show strong women. They've got to solve all these problems. They weren't interested. So the question is, you know, the audience is, ultimately, the audience is the bottom line.
Well, you have to remember also, I mean, primetime TV is entertainment.
Right.
They're not tuning in to be educated. They want to have fun, laugh, or get involved in an adventure, and some people like adventures and some people don't. So you always have to remember that it is there for that purpose. And the people that they're watching are in their living rooms, sometimes in their bedrooms, and, you know, whatever room that the TV, you know, might be in at that moment. And it's a very personal experience, so they have to like these people, want them in that room. And it's a very hard thing to capture. That's why shows are on and off within a blink. Male shows and female shows constantly, and it's that magic formula that everybody always looks for. That nobody knows. That nobody knows. Yeah. You know what it is. What makes a show work? Why is one show a hit and one show isn't? You can sit and do, you know, statistics all way down the line, and there's no formula whatsoever. So that is the key, and that's just something that's always a risk once it's thrown out. But to target anything very specifically means you're looking for a formula, and you can't, it doesn't work, as you found out. It just doesn't work at all.
I have a question for Deborah. You worked on My Sister Sam and
Yes.
Murphy Brown too,
Yes.
and
My Sister Sam was like a totally female, just about production crew,
No.
or there were a lot of women.
No, that's
Oh, that's what people have
myth. It's a
said.
more female-oriented show because it dealt with two sisters,
Oh.
and it had three lead females and only two males. So it was
I was just
Diane
going to
and
ask
Corby.
if there was a difference in between the Murphy Brown and My Sister Sam, just in terms of atmosphere or anything that you noticed changed. Because I thought Diane had said that she sort of intentionally surrounded herself with more men on Murphy Brown than she did with My Sister Sam.
Maybe she did,
Mhm.
but as a person on both shows,
Yeah,
I don't notice
yeah.
anything that different
Interesting.
about the two shows. It's run by Diane, I'll tell you that.
Oh.
Both shows, she's the boss. So it might be from her perspective when she works with
Uh-huh.
people. But Sam, Sam as we call it, was a girl show. It is definitely a girl show. There was not a large male audience for that show, although it did very well. And we had a female director the first year. And the second year we had many male directors and only one female director come in, and we alternated. And there were a number of women writers on the show, but we also had a lot of male writers on the show. And we had a joke, well, maybe they got to the point where TV Guide and everybody was calling this a female show, and it really irked people on the show because there were a lot of males on the show who contributed as much as anybody else. And someone just took a styrofoam cup, put it in just where the walkway was where you entered, and put Tampax in it and said, "My Sister Sam, welcome, take one." It was just so frustrating. It was like, well, you're not even going to be on a female show.
I didn't know what to do with it.
So, it was. We all laughed and it was very funny, but because we didn't take it that seriously as being a female show to that degree.
Well, I know Diane and Corby and Debbie sit on high-rises and whistle at attractive young men that walk by.
Well.
It's humiliating.
You have to wear shorts to work.
At this point, I'd like to open up a Q&A session. Anyone in the audience that has questions they'd like to ask of our guests.
I had one question. Do you think that the image of strength maybe portrayed by women in shows has hurt them as actresses? I'm thinking maybe like Kay Lenz, for example, or say Diane Muldaur, who's been portrayed in 2 shows recently in Star Trek, the recent Star Trek, and then they just dropped her down an elevator shaft in L.A. Law. Is that hurt people's careers at all if they seem to show strength in programs?
Just from a writer's perspective, I certainly don't think that's true at all. From a writer's perspective, I think strength is not as important as what I find interesting in a character, and I think actors feel this way too, is, except for a lot of American stars, you like to find problems or weaknesses in that character. Murphy Brown, for instance, is a very, very powerful character who throws her weight around quite a bit. But the wonderful thing about writing her and watching her is that she's a bitch sometimes. Other times she's cruel, she's selfish, she's vindictive. It's like there's all these little things.
These are all the good parts? Tell us about her bad characters.
Oh, that. No, but no, I don't know that power is a question of whether it hurts or helps an actor, but the weaknesses of a character, I think, are what makes it interesting for a writer. Did that?
She's believable. She's a believable
Yes,
character,
I
and I
think
think that's important.
Any character, when you see that they have any powerful character who has weaknesses, makes them just that much more accessible.
The gentleman in the back?
I'm interested in this whole discussion about the role of women. Is there a reason why you keep referring to them as girls?
Oh, the babes?
Particularly refers to the girls' shows, and I'm confused about that term. Because I think of that as girls' shows would be if you had junior high school class. We're talking about
Girls show.
Who's guilty?
Who's guilty? Who said girls show? Did I say girls?
who?
Did I say girls show?
I don't know. Continually, I've heard that phrase.
Let's go back on that.
I was talking about real girls for a while, but, like teenage girls.
Yeah, My Sister Sam was a girl show.
Sam was a girl
Girls,
show.
yeah.
Oh, you're talking about audiences.
It was,
and
you
stuff,
know,
too.
well, it had a girl in it, a 16-year-old girl in it. It was geared, well, I'll be careful to say women, females now, but, you know, women and females, but, no, it was,
women.
yeah, it was a girl show. I'm a girl.
Questions? I'm curious about who among you all is married and has children, and how you deal with that. You too, Mr. Williams.
Look. No, I'm single and living in sin with someone. A woman.
A girl.
A girl. Babe, a chick.
I'm married and have 2 children.
I'm married and have a stepchild.
I'm single and have no children. I'm not engaged.
She fools around a little.
Fool.
I don't know.
With girls.
With girls.
Questions? Right here.
I know that there's a high death rate among shows, and you've already addressed somewhat the fact that there was, for instance, shows that were directed at certain audiences. I'm just curious to know if a lot of the shows that are tried are shows that try to portray not only women but minorities in a more realistic light, or I don't know what the proper word would be, but a fuller character. Are these shows being attempted and dying, saying that the mass audiences don't want these shows, or that they're not being attempted at all? You've touched on it. I just wonder if there's an aspect.
I'm not sure I know exactly what you mean.
Lots of shows are tried all the time.
Right, right.
Are a lot of the shows that are dying now, that are being rejected by the audiences, as it were, are these the stereotype shows, or is it because audiences don't want to see these shows?
That there's a correlation between audiences wanting to see a certain type show versus
Exactly.
another and portrayal.
Yes.
God,
No, I think shows are canceled because they're just bad.
yeah.
For the most part, and people don't like them. And you can have everything from Gregory Harrison's show being canceled to any woman's show being canceled.
I honestly don't think there's forethought or conspiracy. It just, it's just hit. No, I know what you mean, but
The audience.
I think there's a lot of
It's hit and
things
miss.
that, I mean, some of it is scheduling too, when the show is on and what network it's on and what it's up against, and if it gets moved around a lot and you can't find it. I agree with you, Deborah. I mean, I think people want to be entertained, but I also think that we don't want to be bored, and we do like to see some reflection of ourselves in what we see. And I think the shows like Murphy Brown and MASH and Mary Tyler Moore are popular and are really beloved because they are authentic, and we have that aha reaction, like, oh yeah, and because of that, they're not banal and they're not vapid, and we don't get tired of them quickly. So within the escape and within the entertainment, I think there has to be some kind of mirror that shows us back to ourselves. I also think, and you could disagree with me, but I do think TV goes in cycles, and I think to a certain extent it matches the national mood. And Norman Lear was the 70s, and the primetime soaps were the 80s, and I'm not sure what the 90s are, but nobody's going to do a Dallas now, and nobody's going to do a Dynasty now. That time is gone, and so I think that there are cycles. I think that they repeat, and matching a national mood. People get tired of things and want new things, and so the timing of a show can be very important. It can be too soon, it can be too late, or you can hit something just right.
That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
That's
Luck
right.
of the draw.
Yeah, that has to do with the fact that there's no formula. It goes back to the same thing. You
Yeah.
never know. And programming is hard. And that's why they pay people lots of money, and they go back and forth in programming trying to figure out where to put television shows for target audiences. And well, it's not an 8 o'clock show, but it is an 8:30 show, and it's it's this show, and it should be a Wednesday night, but it's against this, so we're going to put it on Tuesday night, but it doesn't work. And they
spend millions and
Chessboard.
millions and
Chessboard.
millions just trying to figure this
It
stuff
out.
out,
They
and
still
nobody.
can't.
That's sort of, I guess, the beauty of it too, is that
Yeah.
nobody knows.
Yeah, and it's And when it happens, it's magic, and I think it has happened. You know, it happened with NBC on Thursday night, now it's happened with CBS on Monday night. A reporter was calling me about something else, anyway, and I think it was in Richmond, as a matter of fact. I think it was in your hometown. Maybe she's here. A reporter was doing a story on breast cancer, and she was following some women around, and one woman said that she couldn't go to a breast cancer support group meeting because it was on Monday night at 9 o'clock, and she couldn't miss Murphy Brown. And she couldn't miss Monday night, period, on CBS. And this reporter thought, what have I stumbled across? And so in the newspaper, they put this little blurb in that said, you know, if you have anything to say about CBS on Monday night, give us a call. And they got like 300 phone calls from people who said, I'd never miss Monday night, and talked mainly about Murphy Brown, but about a lot of other things as well. So, you know, when you scheduled that, who knew that that was going to happen on a Monday night, but I guess it has.
They kind of knew that that was the time slot for it, Monday night at 9. I don't, you know, I think that was something that...
But it could have failed miserably.
It could have, but, you know, it just seemed like it was the right night for it. My sister Sam did very well on Monday night at 8:30 until there was politics going on there that took that show off the air and moved it around to Saturday night and killed it. Yeah, Monday night seems to be a comedy night. I don't know if it's coming off of the weekend and people are already, you know, they want short, funny shows. Go figure. You know, you can't. And it just worked that particular night. If they had put it against Cheers on Thursday night at 9, it probably would have disappeared.
Bob Alley?
I wanted to ask about Monday night because CBS has used Monday night as a woman's night for years to count a program against ABC football. And if you look at Cagney and Lacey, look at Rosie O'Neill, look at what has been on Monday night, it's a conscious effort, as far as I can see, of NBC, of CBS. The program shows that would be appealing to women. And that is precisely what Murphy Brown was presumed as part of Murphy Brown's notion, I think, putting it on Monday night. And I wonder whether putting it on Monday night had any impact, as far as you know, on Diane and how she worked with the show. Did it make a difference, the fact that it was on Monday night?
I don't think so. I don't think it had anything to do with it. And it's not a woman's night at all anymore. You have Major Dad and you have Evening Shade. Well, yes and well, no, it's not about a woman. No. Like Cagney and Lacey and Designing Women and Murphy Brown might be considered. But also, Murphy Brown also has a very high male audience. Very high. And I think that, and now they're putting Northern Exposure on, they're trying a different show on at 10. And I think they're not going to try and keep it a woman's night. I think they want to just make it into a successful night and build around 2 successful shows, or now what is turning out to be 4, pretty successful shows in a row.
Is it not the case that CBS looks at the demographics with respect to Murphy Brown and finds that the target audience for them is women from, say, 21 or 25 to 40 some, and that is no matter how Murphy Brown had done in the top 10 or 20, it had, as Diane said, a sufficient audience of women in that span to keep it on the air because of the demographics.
That was in the beginning, yeah. That was in the very beginning, before it established itself. But it's gathered more and more male audience as well. And we did very well considering what we used to do against Monday Night Football this past year. So the audience has grown, and I think, I would guess, I certainly don't know how CBS is looking at it because I'm not CBS, that they're looking at it as just a hit show right now and trying to just tangent out to get people to watch their other shows, no matter what they might be, and just use it as a successful show, not necessarily a successful show that only is geared towards women. But yes, the major part of the audience is women.
Yeah, I don't recall any sort of anything done gearing the show or the programming of the show toward women on Diane's part. I mean, it's from my involvement in the beginning, it just seemed like just a bunch of people sitting around a table trying to make the show as funny as we could. And I can honestly say I really don't think there was any intent to gear it towards male or female, certainly in the writing of it.
I'd like to ask a question of our Murphy Brown people, if I may. Frequently, I know that there are various screenwriting contests for students and just interested people. And the suggestion is to write for a sitcom like Murphy Brown, and Murphy Brown is frequently mentioned, and send in a script and just take a chance on getting into the business that way by writing for an existing, very popular sitcom. Can you tell us how effective that approach is? I know there are a lot of young people interested in getting into the business, which is so hard to do. But how realistic is it for a young person, say in this audience, who's interested in screenwriting, in writing for television, how realistic is it for them to feel that they can send a script in to you, Russ, or to someone on the show and have that script read? And do you ever take scripts from unknowns like that, from first-time writers?
Take them, we'll use them.
Put your name on it.
You have to be real careful. No, actually, the answer to that is
You should talk about that. Debbie knows
yeah.
more
You have to be real
about
careful because
technical
of
producing.
lawsuits. People just send in spec scripts, and you might come up with an idea for a secretary or for a B story or something that happens to be something that's already in the works. Because, Murphy Brown obviously has a certain situation, there's certain limitations to it, and anyone can come up with an idea. And you have to be very careful that someone just didn't happen to send in a script that has a secretary who is, a motorcyclist or something like that, sitting there, and then can see it on the show in 6 months, but it was already being written by another writer, and say, wow, that was my idea, and I sent it in. So generally, spec scripts are not accepted.
Yeah,
They have to come
Murphy
from an
Brown
agent.
was inundated by it. Yeah, it either has to come with a cover letter from an agent or a legal release form.
Yeah,
Right.
and even then it gets very touchy because there are so many.
But
that they
that's
don't
how
have
you
time.
do it. If you are interested in getting into the business, that's how you do it. Is you write. It's called a spec script, and you write it about your favorite show, and then you try to get people to read it.
Mm-hmm.
That's really the only. And there is a great demand for good writers. There's a lot of people trying to do it, but those who are at least competent always find work, male or female. My experience has just been that it's wide open if you're good.
Yeah.
Debbie can tell you more about getting into producing from the technical aspects.
I was going to say, one of the thing that I've noticed, I'm not a writer, but I've heard writers talk and say they get a script and they'd say, they think they can write a Murphy Brown. I think the best thing to do is, if you want to do a spec Murphy Brown, you should definitely go ahead and do it. It's the thing to do. Send it to Cheers. Send it to another show. Because when you send a script of that show to that same show, people are reading it with a whole other perspective than, say, the people from Cheers reading a Murphy Brown. Because they're just watching it on television. And they don't live the show. They don't live the characters and know every little quirk. I mean, they know exactly what Murphy Brown would do in a given situation.
And it can change from day to day also.
And they'll be the ones to change it. So if you say Murphy Brown is, Murphy Brown would never do anything like this, and that's stupid. Well, they might have her doing it somewhere down the line because they've written it and they've accepted a certain change in that character. So I would say write your Murphy Brown, write your Cheers or Cosby, but send it to another show. And then if there's interest, and I think that reflects their perspective on a Cosby. If you're at Murphy and they see Cosby or Cheers or Newhart, whatever, then they very well, you might get a phone call. And if it comes through the legal process, then you might get a phone call asking to see something else on Murphy Brown or to pitch an idea or talk about it.
You would generally use those scripts, though, to secure an agent before you attempt to get on at the shows. The shows are pretty tough to get anything through agents.
Yeah, without an agent, yeah.
Question?
I'm curious to know how writers of shows decide what names they're going to give the lead characters, because interestingly, the characters we talked about, my sister Sam and Murphy Brown, both have names that are interchangeable between female and male names.
Oh, well, I'm Diane chose those names, and
She's bisexual.
I'm going to send her a copy.
I don't know.
I don't know why she picked those names. I haven't a clue.
What job are you taking up next?
That is she'll be available at some point.
Question?
How do the writers, what outside influence, or how do they direct, like a character like Eldon that starts off as a walk-on or a few lines and then grows and becomes more developed? What outside forces or inside forces guide or lead or
Well, he had been on My Sister Sam.
Well, yes, not as Eldon. He was just an actor who played a role, and Diane really liked him a lot. And from her own experience with construction people in her house,
That's right. She
where
went
they
through
move
hell.
in and never leave. She was having work done on her house.
The whole first year of Murphy Brown, we always got updates on these
we
people.
all lived the nightmare of
Yeah.
these guys living in her house, and they never left. But even before that, it was going on. And it was,
And
he was
Robert
always,
Pastorelli, his performance
Yeah.
is, you know.
If somebody gets a response and you see the audience responds to him, and he's fun to work with, and you can see it on the screen, I would assume that you just want to write more material for him.
Yeah, he's fun to
He
write.
just grows at that point.
Talk about audience response. What, in terms of letters, what is it, what kind of feedback do you get just from viewers? What do you know?
They love to criticize. They love to find mistakes.
But I
and
mean, if somebody writes a letter, it goes to the networks and they send you a sample?
No,
or
the
what do you
networks really
see?
don't read the mail that comes. If it goes to CBS, they just reroute it to us. And the actors get their own mail. And the ones that come to Murphy Brown would go to Diane, and I've seen a number of them. And they love to catch mistakes. You numbered 2 secretaries, number 44. Did you realize you did that? And we go, yes, we did. Well, we sent him a T-shirt. They noticed it. I mean, and the credits go by in a second. They notice this. Yeah, they get angry at Candace for doing a Sprint commercial. They can, talk about the ecology show. We get lots of requests for tapes of certain shows to show in seminars, and we had a retreat show. So a lot of corporations sent in. We had an ecology show, a lot of because they want to start a recycling program, and we try to accommodate as best we could all these things. But the response is, we love your show generally, but then they always love to, and I have a great idea for, And
There's some lunatics too.
those are the ones you write and
letters.
send in.
Yeah,
Your
I do that
handwriting.
one.
I know.
But it's true though that the networks, I've heard that the networks, letters addressed directly to the network regarding certain shows, intelligent letters written.
If someone wrote a letter to Jeff Sagansky and it was regarding Murphy Brown, he would probably read it.
they
But if it
tend
just
to get a
comes
lot
to
of-
Murphy Brown,
Right.
it comes directly to
But
us.
they
Not
pay
email.
attention to, the network people pay attention to letters.
Probably, if they're intelligent.
Well, there you go, they don't, they don't pay attention.
Oh, I'm just kidding.
Question
Good night, everyone.
Growing Green.
You talked a lot about nighttime television and sitcoms. I was wondering about your views on soap operas and daytime television.
Oh, I want to say one more thing about letters. I'm not being soap operas. I have a
She's
lot of
avoiding
opinions
the
on soap
subject.
operas. I know soap operas, so I like them. Letter campaigns can save a show. Designing Women was saved by a show, by letter campaigns. And in the beginning, we kept names of people who were fans of the show, just in case we fell into a position where we felt that we weren't getting enough publicity or whatever, just in case we had to go out and do that. So letters can be effective if you think your favorite show is not going to make it because of whatever reason. You can write and get lots of campaigns going, and it can have an effect.
And I don't know what the status is at the networks these days because they've had so many cutbacks, but I know that, say, 3 years ago or so, they did have people in New York whose job it was to read all the letters and to put them in a category. Complains about bad language, likes, blah blah, complains about sex, just so that the network had their finger on the pulse of the viewing public, just for damage control. And then a summary of the tally of what people were complaining about, what the hot issues in the viewing audience seemed to be, would be passed on to various executives. And what I sort of always heard was that the kinds of networks that, or the kind of letters that people paid attention to were the ones that did seem to be not mass-produced, that seemed to be very hand-written and well thought out. And what people would say is, what you really should do is, get the the spiral pads that your kids have for school, rip it out, put a coffee stain in the middle of it, so it'll look like you were at your kitchen table really writing it, and that it wasn't generated by some mass campaign, and it was individually sent. But there is, at least they used to, keep just some kind of very general tally of what the issues were that the viewing audience cared about.
It'd be interesting to just contemplate the kind of letter campaign that's going to result from Michael Gartner's decision at NBC to name the alleged rape victim. Did you notice that today's newspaper was just full? I mean, the editorial comment, news coverage. I know that in some cases, letters going in about news decisions create a lot of angst. Perhaps even not more so than in, for example, sitcoms, but I know that news departments are very sensitive about the kind of response that they get from decisions that they make. And I imagine that NBC probably is deluged right now with letters. People who would never write a letter about an entertainment program will be writing letters about that decision.
Could you
Back to soap operas.
Could you repeat the soap opera question?
I was just wondering about your opinions on women and men, gender types and so on.
Well, I'm a guy, so I don't watch them.
But you used to be a girl. Did you watch
That's right. I remember the old ones. General Hospital days ago.
What I have to say might be outdated, but let's call it historical. A good thing that the soap operas have done historically is they, way before primetime TV did, they had older women in positions of authority. They didn't just lock you off and send you into the great dark beyond when you hit 30, when primetime television was doing that. And you can probably all remember matriarchs and wise women and women who gave advice and were well respected on daytime soaps. That's always been true of daytime soaps. So in that sense, they were a leader. They've also been, I think, in some ways, breakthrough in terms of issues. They've done breast cancer and have been kind of bold in terms of that. In some cases, earlier than primetime shows. I think their audiences now are pretty diverse. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know what the statistics are on their audience, but I know my mother's watched soap operas forever, and I remember seeing soap operas since I was told, sit down, TV's on now, and don't talk to me. And I always found, talking to my mother, who watched who would sit down at 11:30 in the morning till at least 2:30 in the afternoon with her, who turned channels and for certain ones. Her awareness of the world was based on soap operas for the most part. She's not a news woman. News is something that she was cooking dinner, when news was going on. And I would talk to her and she would say, oh, well, it's okay for you to get pregnant now even though you're not married because so-and-so is a very nice girl and she just had a baby. Look at her and think, well, this is very interesting. and her attitudes would change into the more modern world, so to speak. I said, well, I don't want to, but it was constant, and like you say, breast cancer. They're meant to be Harlequin novels in terms of romance, and that is their intent, and they never shy away from admitting that. But when it comes to dealing with women's issues, I think they're pretty much right on the edge.
And they've changed a lot. They've changed to reflect their audience. In the old days when I was watching them, and when most women who were watching them were stay-at-home moms, the bad women were the career women. Remember them? They would have affairs with the husbands, and then they'd die horrible deaths. They'd get diseases or they'd get run over or something. But the message was really clear. It was a very reassuring message to the housewife. Don't worry, she'll die. And it's true.
There would be career women who weren't married. Career women who weren't married, and they would absolutely still have husbands.
That's right. They were not married. They were unhappy. They had careers, and they were dead. And that is no longer true.
You didn't work at home in those days.
No, and now as the demographics have changed and there are very few full-time homemakers, there are women who are in and out of the workforce, might stay home with their kids and then get a part-time job, and they have a series of jobs. They might not be career women, but most women these days just economically have got to work at some point. And so that distinction has really been thrown away, and so now you have women who become CEOs overnight, which I really love. So they have no job experience, and they become editors of magazines, and they have great offices, and they can talk all day. They do no work.
I have a great soap opera story to tell. There was a young man at Corporation for Public Broadcasting that was director of development. His job, that's a nice term for going out and raising the money for new programs, and he went down to visit his grandmother in North Carolina and came back with this absolutely wonderful story. he went to church on Sunday morning with his grandmother, and this was a very, it was a very straight-laced Protestant church, and very conservative, and everyone was sincere, and it was wonderful, and he was enjoying this experience, and there were all these old women in the church. And just at the end of the service, the minister said, this was the prayer line or whatever, and he said he would like to know about any of the members of the congregation who'd like to offer special prayers for people in need. And Danny said, you know, one after another, these women stood up, you know, and they'd like a prayer for Sonia because her daughter was having serious surgery next week, and her twin babies had been in an automobile accident. Dan sat there. One after another, these women stood up, and all these terrible things. And one of them said, oh, and you know, I'm so worried about Ralph because, you know, he's going to be executed for murder next week, and he didn't do it. And then when the service was over, he said to the minister, my God, I can't believe this congregation with all of these terrible things. And the minister said, oh, son, all soap opera stories. These elderly women were so involved that they asked the minister to pray for the soap opera characters the next week.
Well, you know, it's a well-known fact that the audience who watches soap operas have the mentality of age 12.
No, that's not true.
That is no offense to your mother.
Oh, no, it's okay.
But that is a well-known fact.
My mother comes in around 10.
I think they're boring.
I used to tape them sometimes and watch them at night.
There are a lot more men watching.
They're addictive.
A lot more men nowadays watch.
Yeah.
One of the things they do is, I mean, they're like life in the sense that in a mobile society where you don't get to know your neighbors, for some people this is a very constant, regular, familiar presence in your life. Unlike Murphy Brown, who's on for a half hour on Monday night, this is an hour a day, and the pace is much slower, and so there's a regularity and a familiarity. And if any of you have watched soaps, and if you know, go away for 3 months or 6 months, and you get caught up in it's like life. Nothing's changed, and a lot has changed in terms of the lives of the characters. So there's a narcotic effect to it. I think that's quite strong.
We have a question from the young woman in the back.
Yeah, I was getting back to the letter writing, and you're talking about the fan mails and about letter writing actually changing something. I was just curious whether the people who write those letters are more male or female. Do you find that there's more one or the other?
I think it depends on the issue, and I just thought of another example of where letter writing made a difference, and it's when LA Law first went on the air. That first season, if you remember the secretary Roxanne, remember when she was a ditz and she was in love with Arnie, and she was really sort of wimpy, and she didn't have much spine. And the secretaries across America were incensed because there are very few secretaries on TV, and when they find themselves, it's like the nurses with Nightingales who got that show off the air. When the secretaries were really upset, and they wrote incredibly articulate, intelligent letters to Terry Lee Fisher and Steve Bochco and the writers of the show. And Terry Fisher later said, you know, we spent all our imagination and creativity really thinking about the lawyers. And when it came time to do Roxanne, we just didn't think as much, and we kind of fell back on stereotypes, and we weren't as creative when it came to her. And based on these letters and some thinking that they did, they turned that character around, and Roxanne asked for a raise for a season, stood up to Arnie, and she's a very, very different character now. And a big part of the reason is letters.
I don't know if they're more male or female. I haven't sat down and I think they're probably about equal, and it does depend on the issue if people are writing about something on the show. I think they're probably equal.
Do you think it's true that, like, a lot, I mean, I would think that a lot of the letters are from 13-year-old kids? I'm not saying the influential letters, but I'm saying the bulk of the mail that networks get.
Fan mail is from
and
teenagers.
A lot of times inactive people who
We'll have nothing better to do.
who television is the focus of their life.
Yeah.
So whereas most of the people that I associate and I would consider normal, happy, healthy adults don't center their lives on watching an evening's worth of television.
And sometimes the letters are quite poignant when you talk to producers of sitcoms like Family Ties and Who's the Boss. A lot of the letters are, oh, tell me where Samantha got her jeans and where I can buy clothes like that. A lot of it really is that, no, a lot of it is that literal stuff from 9 and 10-year-olds who are looking at a 14-year-old girl and love her clothes and want to know how she dresses. But some of the letters, too, a significant number of letters are from kids who say to Cosby Show and Family Ties when it was on the air, I wish my family were like yours. Your family is so perfect and mine isn't. And then tell really sad stories about a single-parent home or a really unhappy home, and watching the show makes them very lonely and very sad because their family isn't perfect. Question up front?
Television is a real powerful medium, and I think that's real sad because I think we're all taking television much too seriously, and I think the viewing public takes television much too seriously. And the fact that kids can say, compare their family to the Cosby Show. I mean, you know, Murphy Brown, I'm glad that I don't have her personal life. You know, she's a wonderful, wonderful character, but that is what she is. You know, and I think, you know, anyone who really takes television so seriously, I'm not saying that this is not, you know, important, but you're you and I'm me and I'm going to do what I want and I'll get where I go. I don't listen to Murphy Brown. I mean, I think she's hysterical, but she's not going to help me make my decisions. But with children, comparing their family life to Bill Cosby, I mean, I've heard horror stories of Bill Cosby in real life. You know, I think that, oh, you know, take two, let's do it again. They don't understand that, and I think that sometimes we just take it all too seriously.
This gets back to the Indian children. You know,
Yeah, exactly.
Truly,
Exactly.
I mean, children who live a deprived life or a very different life, disadvantaged life, it's very tough.
Well, we grew up with Ozzie and Harriet, and those, and Leave It to Beaver and Perfect Family, supposedly like that I don't know, I certainly didn't have. I don't know how many people have that here. There's always that element. But there are also a lot of shows on TV now where it's the broken family. In fact, somebody came in to the office and said her nephew, you know, was watching a show and said, oh, it's so nice to see a whole family on TV that's more like mine, because he was watching the Friday night lineup, and, you know, it's like Full House, and you know, there's always a parent missing, and he can't identify with those shows.
Right.
He finds them funny and entertaining, but so kids do have a different perspective, and that's why they try and be, you know, to be very careful when it comes to doing kids shows and what influence it is going to have on them. And I guess The Simpsons has caused a lot of debate. You know, do you want your kid to, you know, to be
like Bart?
Like Bart, you know, I mean, to answer you back, and you know, hey man, and all this kind of stuff. And a lot of parents are incensed about that, as a matter of fact. So, and it is taken a little too seriously. I was looking at a Murphy Brown and one time, and I looked at Diane, and it was where an interview fell apart, supposedly live television on the air. This interview's falling apart, and someone's running in and out. And I said, you know, I really wish there was FYI on television. It would be fun to tune in every week just to see what these people are going to do. They never get a show on the air. I don't know. Do they ever work? Do they ever do anything? They're always arguing, and there's always something else going on. But somehow they talk about this great show on the air, and it's, you know, but it's fun. And you're showing another perspective of what, you know, what if, you know, kind of thing. And that's true for adults. But it is, I guess, a real problem.
For a lot of children, I think it's true, and for adults, it unfortunately, television fills a void that should be filled by other things, I think, and that's when it becomes more important. The images become more important than they really should be. The image is projected.
So you're a real important guy to a lot of people.
That's how I see it, yeah.
Can you tell me what's going to happen to the Michael Landon show that he's taped for the fall now that he's so ill?
No idea.
I had no idea. I don't know if they did a pilot or if they did very many shows.
I think they did a couple of them.
They might air them as specials, but they might wait and see and hold off until they
replace him with someone else, I wonder.
I think it's his show.
It is?
I think his production company was doing it, and he probably was
a tremendous follower.
Part owner of it.
Bonanza.
But I think out of respect for him, they might not air it at this point, and might just wait and see how his illness
very crucial.
Yeah.
I've been signaled to bring this panel to a close, and I want to thank our panelists for for sharing their expertise, their experiences with us this evening. And I hope it's been as enjoyable for them as it has been for all of us tonight. So if we can have a round of applause for them.
You're all cordially invited to a reception put on by Stephanie Meekus and the Will Program in the Deanery, which is the next building. Just follow Dr. Halley and head for the food. And you're all invited. We hope that you can all come down and mingle with our guests here. See you there. There are programs available here if you'd like, if you don't have one.